Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Women's State of Play in 2022, specifically focused today on abortion rights and access. I'm Jordan Brooks. I'm the Executive Director of the United States of Women. I'm thrilled that the United States of Women today is in partnership with our really incredible friends at the Supermajority Education Fund and the State Innovation Exchange. And we all wanted to come together today to talk about, first and foremost, the state of play for women's rights, really, in 2022, specifically focused on abortion access. We all know that abortion access is under fire this year and has been for many years, but this year, quite particularly, as we see Roe being debated in the Supreme Court at the national level, and we know that states across the country are doing everything they can to really curb abortion access. And so we really wanted to come together today to both talk to all of you about the incredible work that is happening on the ground in communities, that our state legislators and the people that you're going to hear from today are really the backbone of doing everything they can to protect abortion rights and access in states at a time when we are really seeing them under attack every day. So we are really excited to be here with you today. And thank you so much for joining us. A couple of quick housekeeping notes first. This event is being recorded, as you can see. We're really excited to be able to share this with you all afterwards as well. Live captioning is available if you need it. You can just click on the live transcript on the bottom of your screen, on the bottom of your Zoom. You should be able to see that right away. And if you have any questions, please submit them to us using the Q&A function. We are really thrilled to be joined by experts and people who are doing incredible work on the ground in communities, our state legislators who are really fighting the good fight, and we want to make sure they can answer your questions if you have them. So don't hesitate to use that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. But first, we wanted to ask a couple of questions about you all. So we're going to do a little poll. If you see on the bottom, you'll be able to also answer a poll that'll pop up on your screen. We really want to know where you're coming from. So tell us, in what region of the country are you located? Let us know. Click on the poll. We want to hear where you're coming from. We have incredible state legislatures from a couple of different regions across the country, but we really want to hear where you're coming from. So click on that poll and let us know. Let's just take 1 second. I'm here in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, actually. I normally live in Washington, D.C., but I'm here in Massachusetts today. So really excited to have people from all across the country joining us today. We know we had RSVPs from every corner of this country, from all 50 states. So really excited to see where we've got the most people coming in from today. We'll give you 5 more seconds to answer that poll, and then we're going to see where people are here from. All right, team, can you tell us where people are coming in from so we can see? Hopefully there we go. All right, 25% of our respondents are coming from the South, 21% are from the Midwest, 26% are from the Northeast, and 29% are from the West. So we've actually got a really great distribution from across the country here today, which I'm really excited about. The next question we have for you all is, we are really excited to be talking to state legislators today because, as I mentioned, they are the backbone of doing incredible work in your states. We want to know, do you know who your state legislator is? Don't be shy. If you don't, that's totally okay. We're going to give you all of the ways to find out who your state legislator is and how you can help them. But we want to know, many people know, obviously, who our president and vice president are, and people who are working at the national level, but sometimes people don't know who's actually representing them locally. And so we want to make sure we give you all of the access to be able to work with them, to be able to talk to them, and to be able to give them as much help as humanly possible. So let us know. Do you know who your state legislator is? Absolutely. No, where can I find this? We're not sure. Let us know if you know who your state legislator is. We've got some incredibly civically engaged people on the phone today, but it's totally okay if you don't know. Don't be shy. We want to make sure that you can get all that information today. All right. Can we publish that poll? All right, absolutely. 70% of people on this call know who their state legislator is. That's incredible. Great job. I hope you're contacting them about all sorts of issues that are related to your state. No, where can I find this? Well, our friends at the State Innovation Exchange have a really great tool where you can find your state legislator. I'm going to have them pop that into the chat as well. And if you're not sure, that's totally okay. You can also go find it there at our friends from the State Innovation Exchange. We really want to make sure by the end of this call, you all know who your state legislator is and you know exactly how to get in touch with them. Thank you all for being super honest and being so civically engaged and excited to hear about your state legislators. So I want to, stop talking at this point and turn you over to our incredible program we have for today. But as a reminder, the event's being recorded, live captioning is available. Please check it out on the bottom. It says live transcript if you need it. If you have any questions, please submit them to us using the Q&A function. You'll see that also on the bottom of your Zoom. So now I have the distinct honor of introducing our opening speaker today, who needs really no introduction, Cecile Richards, who is really an incredible activist that so many people know from across the country. But I'm going to read you a little bit of her bio anyway, because she's done so many. This is a tiny fraction of incredible things that she's done. But Cecile Richards is a national leader for women's rights and social and economic justice issues. In 2019, Cecile co-founded Supermajority and the Supermajority Education Fund, who are one of our partners here today. And prior to Supermajority, as so many of you know, she served as the president of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America and Planned Parenthood Action Fund for 12 years, working to increase affordable access to reproductive health care, to build a healthier and safer world for women and young people. And Cecile has been an organizer her entire life. She began her career as a labor organizer, working with women earning the minimum wage. And I really am so excited to have Cecile with us today because she has been fighting this good fight, particularly on abortion access and justice for so many years. So let's welcome Cecile to discuss the state of abortion access in the US and the critical role you all can play in helping to protect pregnant people. Cecile, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you, Jordan. It's great to see you and great to be with so many amazing people. And I really thank Supermajority and Six and the United States of Women for pulling this together. I'm just going to make a few remarks, and I put them on a piece of paper because I have not figured out what everyone else seems to have figured out is how to put them on a Zoom screen. So there's just a few points I really wanted to make before you hear from this incredible panel. So we're doing this obviously tonight in large part because this Saturday marks the 49th anniversary of the Roe versus Wade decision that, of course, legalized abortion in this country coming out of the state of Texas. And I think I don't want to bring us down right away, but just to, I think, point out the seriousness of what we're talking about. I think it's not too far-fetched to think this may be the last time we celebrate the anniversary of Roe. And I guess just let that sink in because I'm trying to. Anyone who works in the field of reproductive rights and healthcare access knows that Roe and the Casey decision, which has also been in effect for many years, are very imperfect, but they have also been really the bulwark, the constitutional bulwark that has protected abortion access, safe, legal abortion access in this country for many years, and also has prevented a number of abortion bans, which are already on the books, from going into effect. But given the highly partisan and really, frankly, anti-rights nature of this current Supreme Court, given the recent oral arguments in the Mississippi case, if anyone listened to them, and of course, their refusal to take any action on the ongoing abortion ban in Texas, which for those of you who are following this has been in effect for now nearly 5 months. I think we are likely facing a decision this spring that, if not in word, indeed effectively ends access to safe and legal abortion in America. It's also why this group of legislators that you're hearing from today is so vitally, they are so vitally important. They and their colleagues across the country have been on the front lines of these fights for many, many years. But we are now, of course, facing the very real prospect that 26 states in the country are poised to if Roe falls and Casey falls, to pass abortion bans or already have them on the books, and they will go into effect as a result. So in opening this panel, though, I wanted to point out 3 things that I just think are maybe helpful context. One is that from a public health care standpoint, Roe has been an overwhelming success. when I worked at Planned Parenthood, I would meet doctors who actually had been going through the residencies before Roe was the law of the land. And, they all had stories of young, healthy women dying routinely in emergency rooms across this country from illegal or botched abortions. But today, abortion is one of the safest medical procedures in this country. In fact, it's safer to get an abortion than to get your wisdom teeth out, just to put it in perspective. Also, the introduction of mifepristone, medication abortion has offered another option for people to terminate pregnancies early. And then, of course, better birth control access and better birth control has meant that we're actually have reached an all-time low in unintended pregnancy. Of course, all of these came with a fight. None of this just happened. Thank you, Barack Obama. But that's an important, I think, thing to understand in terms of what the healthcare impact has been of Roe. The second thing is that abortion, access to safe and legal abortion has dramatically changed the economic lives and opportunities for generations. There was a recent report, and I wrote down the notes here just from the Brookings Institute, that actually studied the impact on women directly that would be attributed to abortion access. And it included increased educational levels, greater participation in the workforce, and higher earnings. All of those related directly back to access to legal abortion. And this was particularly true for Black women in America. And third, lastly, abortion for the people in this country, it is not a partisan issue. It's not a political issue. In fact, I think the most recent Gallup poll reported that 80% of people in this country believe that when it comes to a decision about pregnancy, the pregnant person should make that decision, not the government, not judges, not politicians. And, during the years I was at Planned Parenthood, I learned that, people from all walks of life have abortions, regardless of their political party, regardless of their religious background, regardless of almost anything. Nearly 1 in 4 women in this country have had an abortion, including me. And the recent Guttmacher report found that 59% of people who are seeking an abortion already have children. So that's kind of putting in, I think, an important perspective of how important the Roe decision was and is. And of course, all of that progress is now at risk. We know that the loss of access to safe and legal abortion will disproportionately fall upon people with low incomes, people of color, young people, people who don't have access to the resources to travel out of state, have someone take care of their kids, get time off work, and the rest. I wanted to just share this one story. I recently spoke to Dr. Dermish, who is an abortion provider in Austin, Texas, and I was glad to see that a lot of folks on this call are from the South. She shared what a day in her life is like. She said, "Today I saw 9 patients and had to turn away 4 because they were just a few days beyond Texas's abortion ban limit. One patient curled into a ball and started crying uncontrollably. To have a patient in front of you who you are willing and able to help, but are forced to turn away because of politically motivated abortion bans is a moral injury. To have to do that several times a day is unbearable." So for every person on this call, decisions are being made in your state and will be this year that are going to make the difference between the availability of reproductive care and not. And in any state with a Republican governor or Republican legislature, what's happening in Texas could be coming soon to a theater near you. Most importantly, none of this happened by chance. This was not a rogue group of right-wing extremists who made all this happen. This has been the agenda of the Republican Party since 1976, when they put an abortion, the goal of overturning Roe as part of their party platform. So I guess my plea to you tonight is it's time that the overwhelming majority of this country who support abortion access and bodily autonomy are as active as the people who have now worked over these many, many decades to make it illegal. It's important that all of us who support the right of people to make their own decisions about pregnancy are active, are voters, are contacting our legislators. Each one of us has a role to play, to educate ourselves, to call our representatives, tell them where we stand, and to support the folks that you're going to hear from in a minute who are on the front lines of legislatures and assemblies all across this country. I really want to thank Supermajority, again, United States of Women, and SIX for pulling this together. This is not the end, this is just the beginning. So thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Cecile. Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Driver. I'm the Senior Director of Reproductive Rights with the State Innovation Exchange, and I'm honored to kick off our next session with our state legislators. To get us started, we have another poll. So if my friends can release the poll for us. And so our next poll is, what is your biggest concern about abortion rights in your states right now? Whether abortion will be legal in my state, whether abortion will be accessible in my state or surrounding states, the violence or harassment of abortion patients and providers, how my state can support patients coming from other states to get the care they need. And I'm not quite sure, I'm unsure about the state abortion access in my states. So we'll give you a little time to answer that poll and then we will end it. It's streaming in. While you're filling this out, just a friendly reminder, you can chat your questions for our legislators using the Q&A box, and we'll get to the questions after our legislators speak this in a moment. All right, 5 more seconds and then we'll close the poll. And I will end it and share. So it looks like some of the biggest concerns are whether abortion will be legal in your state, whether abortion will be accessible in your state or surrounding areas, how your state can support patients coming from other states get the care they need, and potentially the violence and harassment of abortion providers in your state. All right, thank you so much. I now have the privilege of introducing our 3 state legislators who will speak to you today. I'll give their short bios in the order that they'll speak to us. Again, get those questions ready and drop them in the Q&A box. We'll start off first today with Senator Natalie Murdoch from North Carolina. Senator Murdoch is a native of North Carolina and a local elected official. Senator Murdoch has spent a lifetime learning about the strengths and challenges of North Carolina. She has over 10 years of experience in government affairs, transportation, agriculture, environmental affairs, and economic development. She is the North Carolina State Senator for District 20 and encompasses Durham County, and is the first woman of color under 40 to be elected to the NCGA. Next, following Senator Murdoch, we'll have Representative Lorie Bohatsky. Representative Pahotsky is serving in her 2nd term in House District 19 in Michigan, which encompasses the majority of part of Livonia. She is a longtime activist and volunteer and spent her time as a crisis hotline volunteer and a caregiver at Angela's Hospice. Starting in 2021, I have the privilege of working with her as she serves as the chair of the Michigan Progressive Women's Caucus, which centers the voices of people in the state of Michigan and championing reproductive freedom. Finally, we'll hear from Representative Anna Eskamani, who will join us shortly. Representative Eskamani is a bold fighter for Florida's family every day. Born and raised in Orlando, she's the daughter of working class Iranian immigrants who came to this country in search of the American dream. She's run for office as a first-time candidate in 2018 and flipped the legislative seat, and is proud to serve as the state House representative for House District 47. She's known around Florida as being unbothered, unbossed, and committed to helping the people of Florida. So with that said, you don't want to hear from me anymore. You want to hear from these legislators, and I will pass it over to Senator Murdoch.
All right. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And since a lot of you are just getting to know, some of your local state elected officials, I'm going to give a little bit more background of why I ran, why I think it's so important for some of you to run. and what we are facing, the challenges we're facing here in North Carolina. But this issue, access to abortion rights and reproductive justice, was key in why I decided to run. So first, I'm a proud Southerner. I'm glad to be in good company. I'm a native North Carolinian that can trace their roots to slavery right here in North Carolina. My grandfather was a tobacco farmer, a well-known faith leader who brought strangers and neighbors together. I'm the daughter of a veteran turned social worker and nurse. I was asked to run for office by local community organizer, Brother Ray. He served the Durham, North Carolina community for more than 20 years. And when he told me to step up and serve, I didn't hesitate. I ran. Fast forward to 2019, I was now in North Carolina Senate District 20. After court-ordered redistricting, my senator was appointed to a state board by our governor, opening up that Senate seat. At the time, I was serving as a Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor, a role that many of you have probably never heard of. I worked with local farmers to deliver federal state programs and environmental issues with students in the community. I learned about the policies shaping our state's ability to achieve transportation equity. I saw North Carolina farmers working to preserve our environment. I watched our governing bodies wrestle with climate crisis. My experience has prepared me for the Senate, but it was not easy. I was the only woman in a three-way primary, and also prior to me, the first Black woman to serve in the state Senate actually also represented the same district. So it's very important to me to bring that Senate seat back in the hands of a Black woman. It was hard. I was attacked, subjected to Durham's well-known rough and tumble politics, and my opponents outraised me. But my lived experiences and desire to reach out and engage with my neighbors and community was on my side. I'm a millennial with student debt, a survivor of sexual assault, and a business owner that went without health insurance while having a pre-existing condition. Grandmothers, mothers, sisters, and daughters who looked like me lifted me up, and my campaign was successful, led me to a victory in a three-way competitive primary. Soon after, I won my general election by more than 100,000 votes, the most of any state Senate candidate. Your state legislative houses are where the rubber hits the road. You should engage with your legislative bodies because they have a lot of power to alter how you live your everyday lives. The attack on reproductive rights and justice is the most vicious at the state level, and the lack of access to reproductive health and maternity care is appalling. In 2013, the state house I serve in attempted to restrict our reproductive rights in a motorcycle bill. Yes, you heard that right. Tucked away in a motorcycle safety bill were provisions telling me what I should and should not do with my body. The bad guys win when we aren't paying attention and staying engaged with the process that govern our lives, but women fought back. Congresswoman Alma Adams gave a stirring speech from the floor, inspiring women to act and to persevere under duress. Hundreds of women from across the state protested at the state capitol to signal that they would not stand down against these oppressive laws. No public hearings were heard. They attempted to rush this bill through literally in the heat of the night after midnight. Today, I serve with an all-woman freshman class in the NC Senate. Many of us ran as a result of that very dark day in our state's history. The best way to fight back is to get more pro-choice women elected in legislative bodies across the nation. In North Carolina, 2022 could go one of two ways. If we lose our veto-proof minority, reproductive rights are under attack. If we maintain our seats in the House and our Senate, our governor's veto pen remains intact. There are 83 pregnancy crisis centers here in North Carolina compared to only 15 abortion clinics. North Carolina is one of 14 states that fund pregnancy crisis centers. These crisis centers serve as proxy forces for conservatives to control a woman's body. They oftentimes provide false information, such as telling women they will get cancer from getting an abortion. In my state, we are holding the line. We have blocked abortion reason ban legislation and other bills that would make it harder to get a safe and legal abortion. To be clear, if we don't perform well this November, North Carolina will in fact be the next Texas, passing extreme legislation that will roll back reproductive rights and justice. And in my state, like so many, Abortion is legal, but not easily accessible. We still have laws in the books that make it hard even to be prescribed with medication for an abortion. I need folks listening and people nationwide to vote. Our strategy is to remember the power we have at the ballot. As legislators, we need reinforcements and we need backup. Please continue to stand up, speak out, join us in this fight. We cannot afford to give up. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Murdoch. Next, we'll hear from Representative Laurie Pahotsky.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lorie Bohatsky. I am serving my second term in the Michigan House of Representatives. Prior to running for office in 2018, I was a microbiologist who had never once considered running for office. And I know a lot of people say that, but I really, really mean it. I was really happy to be a lab rat. But as Senator Murdoch mentioned, 2016 happened. And I was never actually one of those people who thought that Donald Trump could never get elected. I had a sneaking suspicion as soon as he made abhorrent comments about Mexican immigrants that would have sent most people out of the race, and he still managed to stick around. I had a really bad feeling that we were in trouble. So it wasn't something that I didn't think could not happen, but actually seeing it was a gut punch. I am a woman. I'm a survivor of sexual assault. I'm openly bisexual. And I had just watched this man who had attacked every community I belonged to become president. And I was terrified, but I also recognize that I am a white woman and I have a lot of privilege that many people do not, even in that situation. So the most impactful thing I could think to do in that moment to push back against all the false narratives and the hate and the fear was to run for office. And running for office was the most challenging and most rewarding thing I have ever done in my life. I was fortunate that I had a very understanding employer, but I still had to juggle working and campaigning, which historically in my district, the folks who had run and won these elections were wealthy enough that they didn't really have to worry about that. So that presented a challenge. I had, in my first election, I had a very competitive primary that I was not expected to win, which would be followed by a general election that no Democrat was expected to win. It was the definition of a grassroots campaign. So there was really no institutional support to start out with. So I would wake up at 5:30 in the morning, go to work, come home, knock doors every day afterwards, and then do other campaign work until about 2 a.m. It was really, really draining. And something I had to learn was to lean in on my support system. So I had a great partner, great friends, great family who were willing and able to help me, but I had to learn to actually be willing to ask for that help, which is one of the most important pieces of advice that I can give to anyone considering running. Be willing to take help from the people who offer it. But running was actually, it was actually fantastic. It gave me an opportunity to learn a lot about my community and what matters to them. And despite being a progressive Democrat running in a historically red district, it turned out that we were concerned about a lot of the same things. So it meant a lot to me to have so many people have conversations that were really deeply personal about things that are difficult to talk about, how our healthcare system had failed them or someone they loved, instances of discrimination, things you wouldn't normally tell a stranger knocking on your door. And I also didn't expect my candidacy to mean as much as it did to other people. So I've had LGBTQ youth reach out telling me that seeing someone from the community run for office and advocate for them helped them cope with bullying. I had one woman tell me that she saved every article she found about me and all of the other women who ran for office in 2018, a year where we saw unprecedented numbers of women running, so that her granddaughter would know that she could do anything. So I got to see firsthand how representation actually matters and how I had the opportunity to be someone that a younger version of myself would have benefited from seeing running for office. Ultimately, all of those conversations paid off, and I ended up winning my general election by 227 votes. So when I tell you that every single vote matters and your vote matters, I mean it. I am speaking from experience. It's not just, lip service. And protecting abortion access and reproductive rights were a huge part of why I ran for office and were a huge part of my platform. In fact, during my campaign, like so many people across the country, I was forced to rethink my birth control plan due to changes made to the birth control mandate. I was furious, like most of us were, that my personal health care was being impacted by the whims of politicians. But I also knew that that was really just the tip of the iceberg. I knew what was coming in terms of Roe v. Wade and access to abortion. As it turns out, my district felt the same. They, like the majority of the country, believe that decisions about whether or not to continue a pregnancy need to be made by a patient and their doctor. Unfortunately, here in Michigan, if Roe v. Wade is overturned, we have a 1931 law on the books that criminalizes abortion. I introduced a bill called the Reproductive Health Act that will not only repeal that law, but expand access and affordability to abortion care and ensure that everyone has the ability to make their own decisions regarding pregnancy, contraception, even sterilization. As the senator mentioned, we also have a lot of laws on the books that were enacted since Roe v. Wade to make abortion more difficult to access, mandated waiting periods, a law that states a abortion provider has to be licensed as a freestanding surgical center, which is just there to limit the number of abortion providers in the state. So the Reproductive Health Act deals with those laws as well. However, given that Michigan has a Republican legislative majority that is unwilling to move that bill, there's recently been a ballot initiative that was launched to accomplish those same goals. In fact, today, the Board of Canvassers in our state just approved the language for that ballot initiative. So it's my sincere hope that it will protect reproductive freedom in our state if the legislature, the Republican legislature, is unwilling to do so themselves. So everyone tonight's here because they care, and I know what it's like to not be sure what you can do about the things you care about. Obviously, running for office is an option and an important one because we need more good people from different backgrounds with different experiences to get elected. But if that isn't for you, you can still get involved, volunteer with local organizations, pay attention to what's happening in your state government and who your elected officials are. I know that we have resources in the chat about how to find out who represents you. So find out who those people are and tell them how you'd like them to do so. Believe it or not, it really does have an impact when it comes to how we vote and the types of bills we introduce. Vote in every election, obviously, research who you're voting for and where they stand on these issues. Like I said, every single vote counts. I am living proof of that. And also, given what is likely to happen this year with Roe v. Wade, donate to abortion funds. Here in Michigan, the nearest states would be, I believe, Illinois or New York for folks needing abortion after the 1931 law goes back into effect if Roe v. Wade fails. And it is not feasible for everyone to travel to a different state to get medical care. So abortion funds are going to be really, really crucial in the wake of any decision the Supreme Court makes. So I just want to thank you all for being here tonight and for giving me the opportunity to talk about the work that we're doing here in Michigan.
Thank you so much, Representative Bohatsky. Y'all, these legislators are truly on the front line. Senator Murdoch's session started today. Rep. Bohatsky has a really great proactive bill that's been introduced. And Representative Eskamani, who is joining us next, ran from committee to join us right now. And so I'm going to pass it off to you, Rep. Eskamani.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. I hope folks can hear me okay. I'm in this like very fancy Zoom room we have at the Florida House and the small but mighty Democratic Caucus office. So it is such an honor to join y'all today from the Sunshine State. But I come to you with very heavy news. Earlier today, we debated a 15-week abortion ban, which would be the first of its kind in Florida and very much mimics Mississippi's 15-week ban that obviously just had old arguments with the Supreme Court of the United States in December. So blatantly trying to pass what is an unconstitutional ban in a state that has a strong right to privacy in our own constitution. So going after both state protections and of course, the precedent set under Roe v. Wade. As Jennifer mentioned, and as my colleagues already described, we each have personal stories that bring us to share this space with you today. My story, like that of 1 in 5 American women, really started as a patient of Planned Parenthood. I know Cecile Richards is here, and Cecile and I first met when I was just a wee little one at 22 years old, but working at Planned Parenthood, my local affiliate. But before then, I grew up in a working class family as a daughter of immigrants. My parents are from two different parts of Iran, but they met in Orlando working at the same donut shop. And so my family did not have a lot of money. We had a whole lot of love. And we did everything we could to achieve the American dream and face a lot of obstacles along the way. And of course, we can spend hours talking about, how attacks on reproductive freedom are attached to white oppression and racism and classism. And we experienced that growing up. I mean, no matter how hard my parents worked, we never got a fair shake. And then to make matters even more challenging, my mom was diagnosed with cancer when I was about 9 years old. And so I became one of her caregivers during that time. And 18 years ago, this Monday, will be the mark of her passing. She passed away when I was 13 years old. And navigating my teenager years, adolescence, without a mom was very, very challenging. And I had not only a lot of trauma to navigate, but my body was changing. And I had no one to talk to about that. No one to talk to about menstruation, no one to talk to about dating. My dad, not only just from a cultural perspective, was it hard to talk to him about this kind of stuff, but he also took a job abroad to help make ends meet as a single parent. And so I really didn't have that safety net that a lot of kids have. And when I had absence-only education in my public school, that erupted something in me. I wasn't even sexually active at the time, but I was pissed that there was this educator talking to all these teenagers about having sex before marriage was committing a sin, kind of perpetuating all of the really sad and scary misinformation curriculum we see out there. And so when we were leaving the auditorium, she had a basket of mints. And she asked each one of us to take a mint to make a commitment to her that we would not have sex before marriage. And I was just so appalled. I did not take the mint, but I went searching for answers because I wanted to make sure that I knew what it meant to make informed decisions that I could also share to my peers. And so I made an appointment at my local Planned Parenthood when I was 18 years old. I walked into the health center by myself, looking for information, and left with a method of contraception that was right for me. And that allowed me to decide to plan my family and to be an active college student and to become a nonprofit professional, to work at Planned Parenthood, to help push back against anti-abortion legislation and other types of coercive policies that impact the patients that we would serve. And before I worked at Planned Parenthood, I was a volunteer serving as a health center escort. And there were many, many Saturday mornings, with our volunteers, just walking patients inside with protesters outside, which really becomes an important metaphor for what we do as Democrats in the Florida legislature, because we are that wall. We are essentially that wall that protects patients going to a health center by protesters. We're the wall protecting patients from anti-abortion extreme politicians and policies. And that's exactly what we did our best earlier today in Florida in our public professions and health committee. But I will tell you that it is a very difficult battle right now in Florida. We have Governor DeSantis, who is trying to vie for a presidential nominee. So he's doing everything he can in a race to the bottom to try to, out extreme Governor Abbott and others like his peers. And of course, we have Republican majorities in both bodies. So I think my biggest message and takeaway, and I'm looking forward to hearing questions from folks, when it comes to fighting for abortion access, we have a lot of work to do within our movement to break abortion stigma and to make sure that we are not causing harm to our own efforts. I've done a lot of workshops with my legislative colleagues and with activists and organizations, because we have to make sure that abortion access is within the progressive narrative. It can't be something that you trade. It can't be something that you only talk about when you're being reactive. You have to be proactive. And kudos to my colleagues who have filed proactive bills. I have done the same. I have filed a repealer of current anti-abortion policies in the books in Florida. And I've also filed legislation for comprehensive sexual health education in our schools. And I filed policy to remove the diaper tax in Florida, because we still pay taxes on diapers here in the Sunshine State. And that's a very important reminder for us, is that we can't just be, champions on one part of the reproductive spectrum. We do have to champion everything and help push back against the oppositional message that those of us who care about happy parents, we also are able to care about abortion access. We can care about happy babies and happy parents, and want to make sure you can make this personal, private medical decision, as many people who end a pregnancy are doing so as mothers. They're making this decision because they're thinking about, am I going to be the best parent for this pregnancy? And so we have to make sure that it's in the progressive narrative. We have to make sure that we're not inadvertently stigmatizing abortion in our advocacy. And we have to center the conversation on directly impacted people, lift up those survivors of rape and incest who either could continue the pregnancy and we're grateful for the option, or ended the pregnancy and we're grateful for the option. Uplift the stories of folks with disabilities, undocumented, people of color, poor people. This 15-week abortion ban, it's an attack on poor people, because at the end of the day, folks of means are going to be able to find a way to leave Florida and express bodily autonomy. It's going to be those that don't have a way to go to North Carolina, which would be our closest state if Roe v. Wade is overturned, that are going to be most negatively impacted. And so to echo the comments made, support abortion funds. These are really important organizations in our state that are already navigating the potential logistics, what it's going to take to make sure folks can still be able to make these decisions and have all options before them. And then do what you can to push back against abortion stigma. Your stories matter. Reproductive justice. Remember, it's not just about when to become a parent or when not to become a parent, but those are foundational. It's also about being able to raise your child in an environment conducive to their health and well-being. And I say all the time that, I don't use the pro-life, pro-choice dichotomy because I don't think it reflects who we really are. I would argue that Democrats are some of the most pro-life people in legislature, because not only do we care about you, the individual, navigating this decision with compassion and love, but we also care about your ability to access childcare and a good school and a safe neighborhood, and they're not going to be victimized by police brutality. So we are pro-life. So I also encourage folks to don't use their messaging. That framework was not one that was developed in our best interest. And so to really be strong that we are pro-reproductive health, pro-reproductive freedom, that we stand against anti-abortion extremists. And this is about a personal medical decision on a pregnancy. And no matter what decision you decide, whether it's to become a parent, choose adoption, or end the pregnancy, that decision remains between you, your chosen family, your doctor, and your faith, and not politicians. And that's our strongest framework to really also help those who typically are apolitical understand where our values are. And when we lead with our values, we can find connections and relationships in ways that are typically not possible. So thank you again for having us. Looking forward to the questions.
Thank you so much, Representative Eskamani. I mean, this incredible panel, Senator Natalie Murdoch of North Carolina, Representative Laurie Pahotsky of Michigan, and Representative Anna Eskamani of Florida. Huge virtual round of applause for you. I can't get to the emoji, but we'll do the Zoom round of applause. So we have some great questions that are coming, some that have been answered in the text. I encourage you to take a look at that. But while we gather those, I would love to launch the next poll question. We've been about what actions you have taken. Let's get a roundup of what you all are already doing on this issue. I'm sure there are some incredible grassroots actions that you all are leading or participating in, and we'd love to see what that looks like. And then let me queue up each of the legislators for the first question I'd love you to take, which is really, what is your recommendation, your one takeaway that you would want listeners here, attendees here, to be able to take about what they can do to protect or defend abortion access and rights in their own state? We heard about stigma busting, we heard about education, we have all kinds of both political and sort of everyday actions that people can take. So I'd love for each of you to just think about what's one of your most critical core recommendations that you want folks to take from here. And let's look at the poll while the legislators think about that. We're almost at 70% of watchers have answered this question. So let's finish it up in about 5 or so seconds and then publish the results. And then Senator Murdoch, I think I'll start with you first for your most critical recommendation for actions to people. Great, let's publish the results of this poll. What actions have you all taken? Oh my gosh, Voted, of course. Asked Congress to support the Women's Health Protection Act. Yes, this is a federal bill that would really try to stem the tide of anti-abortion state level legislation. Awesome, 45% of you have asked your state legislators to protect or defend abortion rights. That's incredible. And talking to family, friends, colleagues, hugely important. Again, Representative Eskamani talked about busting stigma. That is the first and foremost way to start to do that. Senator Murdoch, what else would you recommend?
Yeah, I would recommend something that everyone can do really is simply to speak up. I mean, I think we've all talked about not only stigma, but the fact that starting off with Cecile Richards brought it up in her remarks, this is honestly not as controversial as people make it. We have just allowed ourselves to lose the narrative. When you speak up and say, you know, I have my own story to tell. You know, I have utilized Planned Parenthood services and they were amazing, myself included. Whatever your story is of speaking up, go into those legislative bodies that are by and large run by men that are controlling this story. We really cannot allow them to do that. And I think putting it in plain terms, making it plain to show how frequent it is, how common it is healthcare, not getting into that binary. That was a huge point. We lose when we are not in control of telling the story in the way that we should tell it. So I think whether that is writing letters to your legislative member, emails, physically showing up for hearings is a really big one. You can't really engage in a debate if, you know, all the different perspectives aren't physically represented. So when those advocacy groups that you get connected with in your local area say, this is the day we need you to come, we really need people to show up.
Representative Pahotsky, same question.
So I think that the senator really hit on all the major points. Showing up is huge. You know, probably about 2 months ago, we weren't even holding session regarding anything related to abortion access, and folks showed up anyway and protested in the gallery, and it had some members shook. You know, I mean, it was a very powerful, in your face demonstration of this is something that matters to us, and we are watching what you're doing, and not just on the days where the news is also there covering it, you know? So on a related note, also look at what your state has, what bills are before your state legislature. Those are going to be really important. If there's something you support, let your legislators know. If it's something you oppose, let them know too, but let them know that you're watching. And also, when we're talking about these issues, we need to say exactly what we mean. Reproductive health care and reproductive justice is an all-encompassing term, and sometimes we're talking about a wide variety of things. But when we're talking about abortion, we need to say abortion. That is healthcare. There is no other procedure that we try and mince words or find other ways to say it. We have let ourselves fall into the trap of thinking that abortion is a dirty word, and it is not. So when that's what we're talking about, that's what we need to say.
Awesome. Representative Eskamani, just maybe a slight tweak on the question for you since you started to bring it up as well, and I'm seeing it come up in the Q&A. Lots of questions about the reproductive justice framework. How do we break down the pro-life, pro-choice kind of binary, which you started to talk about, and you know, I think a lot of you brought in other policy issues as well. Maybe can you talk a little bit about how you use an RJ framework and how that maybe helps you establish other connections?
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, actually, we tried that today. So one of the things that's super messed up about the Florida 15-week abortion ban is that it's actually not called that. It's called fetal and infant mortality. And part of this bill is not just the abortion ban, but it's actually funding for our Healthy Start organizations to do expansion of a program called FEMUR, and FEMUR stands for fetal infant mortality. And there are these coalitions across the state that focus on research and looking at maternal mortality rates, but looking at the expectancy of newborns. It's really important work. And we've had 3 different panel discussions in my committee about this. So when this bill dropped and I saw that there was money for Healthy Start and then a 15-week abortion ban, became pretty clear to me what they were trying to do. They're trying to pit the reproductive rights and health community against one another. Because I've served on my Healthy Start board when I was at Planned Parenthood. Like, it's pretty clear to me that abortion access is tied to infant mortality, that actually when you have less restrictions on abortion, infant mortality is more positive because people are ready to become parents. And so if they're navigating different types of challenges that can make their pregnancy much more at risk, this time they can be in control, right? They're ready to become parents. They're going to have more control and hopefully more of a support system around them. And so this bill is before us, right? So the first things I do is I call my Healthy Start coalitions. You know, we have to have these relationships already established, right? So I can't just be abortion out loud. I have to also be intentional in learning, understanding all the other issues in the ecosystem. So I can't pick up that phone and have that conversation. And you know, of course, they did not know they would be in the bill. Completely took them by surprise as well. And then in committee, I filed an amendment to strike out the abortion language, but to keep everything else. And I think those are really important moments because I'm not just here to express opposition to this abortion ban. I want to call you out on your bullshit. Like, why are you attaching these bills together? Like, you are weighing down what are really important programs for newborns with an abortion ban. And how dare you do that, right? And so we have to be, we can't be afraid to say that or have those conversations or be champions of both. Because again, it's all a part of a reproductive justice framework. And I think when you lift that up to everyday folks, community members, constituents, they really understand that and they agree with you and they're frustrated that instead of focusing on areas like contraception access and sex ed, politicians go towards these abortion bans. And so it gives you leverage to also kind of call out the hypocrisy while also championing all these multiple issues at the same time. And I just wanted to add one other point to my colleagues around, what can you do? Because I mean, it feels helpless, especially in places like Florida, where it's just like, oh my God, like this state is so not even just on the abortion front, but from corporate influence in politics on right now, the governor's, going after CRT, he's going after voting. So, and all these issues are interconnected, by the way. But that's why it's so important that we can't control the votes in the chamber. We have to inspire the votes outside. And I've actually launched a voter registration organization last year. It's called People Power for Florida. Never thought I would do such a thing, but I felt like there was a lack in the space of voter registration in Florida. And I also wanted to build a bench. I'm really proud to say that at least 6 members of the Timana family and counting are legislative staffers. And then we have even more grads from the Timana family that have pursued master's degrees in different, public administration and political spaces and campaign spaces. We have folks that are going to law school. We have folks that work in politics and campaigns. So like, we're very proud that we're building this bench. And so when you are trying to shift the direction of a state, you got to have organized people. And I would argue that we don't take care of our people as much. And so I try really hard to also, create those opportunities for that young, passionate leader to find an outlet to build their skills and to be effective. And I know I see Gabby in the chat. Gabby's one of our interns. So I just feel really, really, I think it's very powerful and important that we not forget the organizing piece on the ground. Because again, if we can't win this session, we got to win in 2022 at the ballot box.
Thank you so much. There's some awesome questions in here. I know timing wise, we probably have just room for about one more, but we're trying to answer them in the chat as well. One question that came up when we mentioned the Women's Health Protection Act, which is the congressional federal bill that would help and is critical. There was a question about kind of women in the Senate that I wanted to translate to you each. I know we have a couple of states now where women make up about half or the majority of state legislators, and that's huge news. I don't think that is any of your 3 states. Anything you can share, each of you, just about your experience as a woman, as a young woman in your state legislature. What is that like for you, and how can we all support you? Representative Bohatsky, let's start with you.
There's pros and cons, right? Which is same with anything. Obviously, harassment is a major problem. There's also the element of, I can't even count how many times I've been mistaken as one of my male colleagues' interns. So that's always an interesting way to start the day. But also, so Michigan, at least in the House caucus, the Democratic caucus, we're majority female. And there's been a pretty significant influx of younger female legislators too. And that's been really, really wonderful because I don't feel like I'm alone in those experiences. There's a sense of camaraderie there. We feel like we have each other's backs. And we're also we also kind of have a level of empowerment to also hold our male counterparts accountable, even if that means, hey, I know you heard someone say this to me, you need to stand up to and tell him that that was wrong, which I think is something that those conversations hadn't been had really. So, I mean, there's pros and cons, but I think that for all of the frustration and the negatives, the fact that there are so many more women running and being elected has really made it probably a more hospitable place than it was previously.
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely been a mixed bag, but I would say I was pretty well prepared. I spent 5 years of my life living in Asheville, which was amazing, but there is not a lot of diversity. So I think I was prepared by, at the time I was a transportation planner and I was the only Black person and the first woman of color that was Black to even be, in that role, and going far west. I mean, very rural North Carolina, and, show up at the county commission meetings and I'm the only piece of color in the whole meeting, so I kind of really knew what I was walking into. And even as an elected, the role I had prior as a soil and water supervisor was one of only 4 Black women in the whole state to have that role. Just spoke at their state conference actually last week, same thing with not a lot of diversity there. So I was, and same for women, specifically with that role. What's funny, they have an entire organization of the wives and they're called the auxiliary. And so everyone would say, oh, are you an auxiliary member? I say, no, I'm elected out of Durham, not auxiliary. I'm not married to one of them. I am a elected official. So kind of came here knowing that there would be a lot of that. But as I shared in the opening remarks, we were part of a historic class of all women in the state Senate, 2/3 African-American, 50% of us under 50. I'm one of 3 Black women that were the first to be under 40. We got our first that's right at 30. I don't know why it took so long, but we're finally getting there. But what I have really done is, leaned into the perspective that we bring as women, because these are issues that no one would care about. My favorite one is working on menstrual poverty. And I enjoy going to finance chairs to talk about a pink tax and say, why is it that you're still taxing, products that that aren't taxed for? I enjoy seeing them feel uncomfortable and scream. And at the end, we've had our first woman majority leader who is retiring. And she actually has been delightful to work with. And she was the only woman in that room when the budget was really being finalized. And she is the reason we have funding for menstrual products to be free in public schools. We've never done that in North Carolina. A lot of other states beat us to it. But if she were not serving, we could not have done that. The same for some transportation work I've done. One of those chairs is a woman. With the menstrual poverty, our education chair is a woman. So even though they're Republican women, I'm strategic. I look at what do we agree on, what can we talk about, and also as women, it relates to the topic of this evening. A representative from Florida was kind of touching on a lot of this, of really broadening the conversation to say, do you really care about life? And so as a woman, we've talked a lot about basic provisions for pregnant women in the workplace. Why is that not going anywhere? So it's not just abortion rights, it is women. So if you're going to attack women, just say it. And so we talk about that a lot, and quite frankly, use it as a strategy with a lot of our legislation of, we will have a larger reproductive justice framework. We will call out, why is it that time and time again, when they are poor, when they are women, you don't show up to the plate? So I've actually leveraged that and have had a really fun time doing it.
Amazing. Rep. Eskamani, anything you want to close us out on?
I think folks were fantastic in summarizing, some of those challenges of being women in a male-dominated space. I'll tell you, in the committee I was just at, I think there were only 2 Republican women and 1 was added at the last minute. All the other members were men. So these are still very male-dominated fields, but I mean, it was women who filed the abortion ban in Florida. So I mean, we got to continue to fight for representation and push back against microaggressors. But again, there's also a lot of challenges because we see Republican women also fulfilling these dangerous and oppressive policy proposals. So we got to push back at all fronts, and just so grateful to be in the space. And I appreciate both of my colleagues and everything I'll do. And it definitely makes it feel less alone to be in Florida. So thanks to everyone who joined us, and let's keep fighting.
Thank you all so much. We've dropped all of your Twitters in the chat so folks can keep up with you online. And thank you to these incredible legislators. Emily, I'm going to turn it to you. Emily from United States of Women.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Thank you to our legislators, and thank you to our audience for joining us today. We're going to launch one more final poll to see what other topics we should cover as part of our series. So if we can go ahead and launch that poll right now. And I'll give a few seconds for folks to start submitting their responses. Awesome. Okay, so I think we can publish the results now. So we have some interest in paid and family leave, pay equity, housing, voting rights and democracy protection, education, schools, student debt, healthcare, and climate justice, which is amazing. And just to close this off, you can take action at usow.org/repro to learn more about about abortion access, how you can support abortion funds, petitions you can sign, and more. Now is the time to get involved in the fight for abortion access and become a fierce advocate for abortion. If you have any questions about the abortion policy, you can email jennifer@stateinnovation.org, and make sure that you follow United States of Women, State Innovation Exchange, and Supermajority on social for more updates. Thank you to everybody for joining us tonight, and I hope you have a great rest of your night.